All right, guys, let's take a look at this PowerPoint. Get some notes down for each slide. Of course, you can paraphrase your notes. Just make sure you get the main idea from each slide because this will be extremely important for class on Tuesday. All right, so let's take a look at this PowerPoint. All right, so challenges faced by the new government. We already looked at George Washington and some of his policies dealing with both foreign and some domestic issues. We'll take a look a little bit more in depth today because it's very important for us to understand the relationship between the United States and countries such as Spain and Great Britain, and just understand how they communicated with each other. All right, so securing the Northwest Territory. The U.S. did not own a majority of the western landscape. It was shared by Spain and the Native Americans. Okay, as we discussed in class, there was a large Native American population out towards the Mississippi River, and also a small population of British-controlled forts along the Ohio River Valley. Now, all of those are going to be extremely important and going to cause some problems because Great Britain is not gone from the landscape, even though they were defeated in the Revolutionary War. And we already discussed George Washington and his take on the Native Americans and why he decided to move west. So in the next slide, we'll take a look at some reasoning why the conflict occurred out west. So why was there conflict out west? One area the U.S. desperately wanted for economic purposes was the port of New Orleans. This was important because it would give the United States control of the Mississippi River, but Spain wouldn't just give the United States control of that. They had a great deal owning the port of New Orleans. That's kind of the main artery that runs through North America. So that was a really, really important piece to the puzzle that the United States was really, really trying to get. Oh, sorry about that. So out west, the farmers were angry. They had a really high tax on whiskey made from grain, and they didn't necessarily have enough money to go forward with paying their taxes and being able to pay for things that they need, like food and supplies. So they protested the amount of the tax, and George Washington would have a choice here. What does he do with his armed rebellion? Because it would eventually become that serious, or it would be an armed insurrection. That would be the first we would see out west. Okay, this conflict over the tax on whiskey would be the first opportunity for the new government to show its authority, and they would do so by stepping in and squishing the rebellion. Okay, so you can see very popular among farmers. Okay, and reason being is because it was a lot of money, and they used the whiskey as money. Okay, we talked about bartering in the business class that I have, and this was just another form of bartering, using whiskey to pay for items that these farmers would need. So in the summer of 1794, you had some farmers attack tax collectors to protest the whiskey, tax on whiskey, and George Washington would have to step in and obviously send some soldiers. About 13,000 or so soldiers were sent to put down the armed rebellion. All right, so why did he do it? He did it because if he did not, it would show that the new national government was weak and would not hold any authority. So he needed to show the authority and the strength of the federal government. So it was an extremely important move for George Washington, a very smart move by him. Okay, it was important again because it would show, again, the authority that the federal government had over the states, while at the same time giving the states, again, some freedom and independence the national government needed to be able to show that they can control armed rebellions in their own territory. Next thing we'll look at is the United States remaining neutral. We already talked about their neutrality in class. He declared neutrality when it came to foreign issues, but Britain didn't make it easy because we were trading partners with many of the countries in Europe, specifically France, and Britain would benefit from a split France. Anytime we tried going anywhere near Europe, the British would seize our vessels or ships and take goods off of them. So that became a problem. Obviously, that to a lot of the people in the United States seemed like an act of war. So people were pushing for George Washington to take action. But Washington realized that they were in a lot of debt from the American Revolution, and at the same time, didn't have the supplies to help them out as much as he would want to. He couldn't. So that became a problem that the United States would have to deal with. One way they would deal with it would be Jay's Treaty. Okay, this was designed by Chief Justice John Jay, first Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. He would go to England to work out the problems that we had with Great Britain. The deal was that the British had to pay for any damaged vessels or ships, and they had to leave the Ohio River Valley. That was a security risk for the United States having them there. They lost the war, but yet they still gained some, I shouldn't say gained, but still held some ground out west. So it was important for them to leave. This became unpopular because this didn't allow the United States to go to the West Indies and trade. So a lot of people weren't very happy about this treaty, but it was an important move for the United States to get Great Britain out of the United States, although Great Britain did still exist up in the Canadian landscape, which would become a problem later on in the 1800s. The next treaty we're going to take a look at is Pinckney's Treaty. Thomas Pinckney would help reduce tensions along the frontier with this treaty. Okay, the stipulations were that Spain, which controlled the Mississippi River, would allow the United States to store goods in New Orleans without paying any tax, which was an extremely big deal because that's going to save us money. And the United States could travel freely along the Mississippi River, using it as a main artery to trade their goods and travel. And Spain would agree to the 31st parallel of latitude to use as the boundary for the United States, which, if you look on a map, that is the current boundary of Florida, and that would be the new the new boundary for them. And I said latitude, I believe, before. It's the 31st parallel. I apologize for that. So there were some problems with Jay's and Pinckney's treaty. First thing is the British had to leave the Ohio River Valley, and that had to be done not necessarily with force, but there had to be some oversight to ensure that they did leave, not just on their word. Also, the Pinckney's Treaty was not agreed upon by everyone. Spain kind of lost out on a lot, but the United States did benefit. Not too many problems, but it did allow us to do a lot of things. As you can see, it allowed us to travel along the Mississippi River, and it forced the British to leave, kind of the most important things that went on at that time. If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. I know we have a long weekend, but make sure that you get these notes down. Get as much as you can down for each slide. Again, you can paraphrase, and we will go over this in class very briefly, and then we'll use that information and apply it in class as we have been doing in the past. Also, look for the Chapter 9 / Bill of Rights quiz study guide to be posted relatively shortly. And enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you guys on Tuesday.